Chapter 3. At 5 a.m., the sky still dark, Dumbledore personally escorted Peter Pettigrew to the Ministry of Magic. His face was a mask of calm determination, though inside he knew that this moment would change everything. When they arrived, he demanded an urgent meeting with Cornelius Fudge, the current Minister for Magic. Fudge, still in his night robes and startled by the unannounced visit, looked at Dumbledore with confusion and growing alarm. "What is the meaning of this, Dumbledore?" Fudge asked, his voice strained with sleep. With a sharp wave of his hand, Dumbledore pushed Pettigrew forward. "Cornelius, you've been living a lie. This is Peter Pettigrew, thought dead for over a decade, and the man responsible for the deaths of James and Lily Potter, not Sirius Black." Fudge's eyes widened in horror as he recognized the once supposed dead man. He staggered back, his face paling. This is impossible. Pettigrew is dead. Everyone said Black killed him." "Peter faked his own death," Dumbledore said, his tone unyielding, "and framed Black in the process. You, Cornelius, must right this terrible wrong. Sirius Black has been unjustly imprisoned in Azkaban for 12 years, and I will not leave this ministry until he is released." Fudge, still reeling, stammered, "Well, we can't just let him go like that. We need a trial, evidence." Dumbledore cut him off, his voice filled with authority. "There will be a trial now. I suggest you summon Black and organize the Wizengamot immediately. Pettigrew's confession is all the evidence you need. There is no time to waste." Fudge, thoroughly shaken, nodded quickly. "Very well. I'll arrange it. Immediately." He sent word through his staff, and in less than an hour, the ministry was buzzing with activity. By 6 a.m., a hastily summoned Wizengamot was assembled, robes fluttering as witches and wizards took their seats in the grand courtroom. The mood was tense, filled with anticipation. Dumbledore stood by Pettigrew, his face impassive, as the chained and ragged figure of Sirius Black was led into the courtroom by two auras. Sirius looked half-starved, his gaunt features shadowed by his long, matted hair, but his eyes blazed with fierce anger the moment they landed on Pettigrew. Sirius snarled, his voice a guttural growl. "Pettigrew!" He lunged, his chains rattling, ready to attack the man who had ruined his life. But Dumbledore quickly raised his hand, stopping Sirius in his tracks with a calm but firm spell. "You will have your chance to speak, Sirius," Dumbledore said softly, though his voice carried authority. "There will be justice today. I will personally ensure it." Sirius, though still filled with rage, nodded, his chest heaving with the effort to restrain himself. He stood back, his eyes never leaving Pettigrew. The members of the Wizengamot looked on, many of them shocked to see the man they believed guilty of murder standing in front of them, alongside the very man he had supposedly killed. Fudge, standing nervously at the podium, cleared his throat. This trial is unprecedented. We have new evidence that calls into question the events surrounding the deaths of James and Lily Potter and the actions of Sirius Black. With a wave of his hand, Fudge motioned toward Pettigrew. "Peter Pettigrew, previously thought dead, has been found alive, and under Veritaserum has confessed to his crimes." There was a murmur throughout the courtroom as Pettigrew, looking terrified and dishevelled, was forced to stand. Fudge nodded to the aura at his side, who stepped forward, holding the vial of Veritaserum. "Administer the potion again," Fudge commanded. Pettigrew whimpered but had no choice. The potion was poured down his throat once more, and as the magic took hold, his eyes glazed over. Dumbledore stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. "Peter Pettigrew, under Veritaserum you will answer the following questions truthfully before this court. Did you or did you not betray James and Lily Potter to Lord Voldemort?" Pettigrew's voice was barely above a whisper, but every word echoed in the silent chamber. "I did. I betrayed them. I told the Dark Lord where they were hiding." A shocked gasp rippled through the courtroom. Dumbledore continued, his tone unforgiving. "And did you or did you not fake your own death and frame Sirius Black for the murder of 12 Muggles on that fateful day?" Pettigrew's voice cracked as he admitted, "I did. I blew up the street. I killed the muggles. And I escaped as a rat." Fudge, clearly shaken, turned to the court. "There you have it. Pettigrew has confessed. Sirius Black is innocent." Before Fudge could say anything further, Sirius stepped forward, his voice trembling with rage. 12 years! 12 years in Azkaban for a crime I didn't commit, and you never even gave me a trial. There was a collective shifting in the courtroom as the weight of Sirius's words settled in. Dumbledore stepped forward, addressing Sirius directly now, his voice filled with both regret and sincerity. "You are right, Sirius. You were never given the justice you deserved, and for that I apologize. The Ministry, under the leadership of Barty Crouch and Millicent Bagnold at the time, refused you a fair trial. I regret that I did not fight harder for you then." Sirius looked at Dumbledore, the fire in his eyes slowly dimming, replaced by a deep weariness. But he nodded, accepting the apology. Fudge, still rattled, addressed the court. But before Cornelius could announce Sirius's innocence, a gravelly voice cut through the murmurings of the court. It was Sirius himself, his voice raw with years of pent-up anger and frustration. "I want the Veritaserum," Sirius demanded, the courtroom stilled. "I want it administered to me, here and now. I have nothing to hide." Fudge hesitated, unsure how to proceed, but Dumbledore nodded in agreement, stepping forward. "Give it to him. Let him speak for himself." An auror brought over the vial, and without flinching, Sirius allowed the Veritaserum to be administered. His face hardened as the potion took effect, his eyes becoming distant as the truth serum worked its magic, leaving him unable to lie. Dumbledore stepped closer, his expression unreadable, but his voice calm and steady. There were questions he needed answered, not only for the court, but for himself, questions that had haunted him since the Potter's death. "Why," Dumbledore began, his voice filling the courtroom, "did you and the Potters switch secret keepers without informing me?" Sirius's lips parted, and the truth spilled out, unstoppable. "We thought it would be safer. We thought it would throw Voldemort off. James insisted on keeping the switch secret, even from you, Dumbledore, thinking it would protect Harry and Lily better. We chose Peter because we believed no one would suspect him. I thought I was doing what was best for them. I never imagined Peter would betray us." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed as he asked his next question, his tone sharper now. "Did you ever support Voldemort? Directly, indirectly, or otherwise?" Sirius shook his head vehemently, the potion ensuring absolute truth. "Never. I hated him. I fought against him from the beginning. I would never join him, never help him in any way. I was loyal to James, Lily, and Harry. Always." Dumbledore studied Sirius for a long moment, digesting the honesty in his voice. He wasn't just hearing the truth, he was feeling it. Sirius Black, broken and betrayed, had been loyal all along. Sensing the need for closure, Dumbledore pressed with his final question, more official in tone. "Have you ever, directly, indirectly, or through any means, supported or worked with Lord Voldemort, or aided his followers?" Sirius answered firmly, his voice filled with conviction. "No, I have never worked with or for Voldemort. I fought against him, and I would die before ever supporting him." The courtroom was silent. Everyone held their breath, hanging on Sirius's every word. It was undeniable now. Sirius had been innocent all along, trapped in a nightmare created by the betrayal of a friend. Dumbledore turned to the Wizengamot, his voice calm but resonant. "You have heard the truth from both Peter Pettigrew and Sirius Black. It is clear that Sirius Black has been unjustly imprisoned for a crime he did not commit." Fudge, still stunned by the weight of everything revealed, finally found his voice. "Sirius Black is innocent." His words echoed through the chamber, cementing the truth. "Peter Pettigrew is guilty of the murders for which Black was blamed. Black is hereby cleared of all charges." The courtroom erupted in shocked gasps and murmurs, but Dumbledore's commanding presence silenced them quickly. "This man," Dumbledore gestured to Pettigrew, "will be taken into custody for his crimes. I trust the Ministry will ensure justice is done." Sirius stood, his chains removed, but the weight of 12 years in Azkaban still lingered on his thin frame. He turned to Dumbledore, his eyes burning with a mixture of gratitude and deep sorrow. "You are free now, Sirius," Dumbledore said softly, his voice carrying both regret and reassurance. "You are finally free." For a moment Sirius stood there, the reality of his freedom settling in. He glanced around the courtroom at the faces of the witches and wizards who had once condemned him. The truth had been laid bare, and the man who had been wrongly imprisoned for over a decade was finally exonerated. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what had just happened. Sirius, still processing his release, looked to Dumbledore with a mix of exhaustion and gratitude. Dumbledore turned to the assembled court. "Let this be a reminder to us all that justice must be served fairly, and we must not be so quick to judge without all the facts." The minister left the courtroom for a few minutes. As the courtroom began to settle after Sirius's exoneration, the large doors creaked open once more. Cornelius returned, walking quickly and with an air of finality, alongside Madame Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Her stern expression carried authority as she approached the Wizengamot, her presence commanding immediate attention. Raising her wand to project her voice, Madame Bones officially addressed the court. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Wizengamot, it has come to our attention that the fate of Peter Pettigrew, now fully confessed to his heinous crimes, must be decided swiftly." She paused, her gaze moving across the room, her words solemn. "Given the severity of his betrayal and the catastrophic consequences his actions have wrought, namely the deaths of James and Lily Potter, the wrongful imprisonment of Sirius Black and his contribution to the destruction of countless lives, it is the belief of the Ministry that Pettigrew must face the most severe punishment." A quiet murmur rippled through the room. Sirius stood frozen, listening closely, his heart pounding as the reality of what was about to happen sunk in. Madame Bones continued, her voice unwavering. "It is my recommendation, after discussion with Minister Fudge and other high-ranking members of the Ministry, that Peter Pettigrew face either the Dementor's kiss or be sent through the Veil of Death. His crimes are unforgivable, and it would be safer for the wizarding world to know he is completely gone." The mention of these punishments sent a chill through the courtroom. The Dementor's kiss, the ultimate removal of a wizard's soul, was feared by all, and few could forget the ominous veil that hung in the Department of Mysteries, a gateway to death itself. The severity of Pettigrew's crimes, though undeniable, still made this a difficult decision for many. Madame Bones continued, listing every crime Pettigrew had committed, each one landing like a stone in the pit of everyone's stomachs. His betrayal of the Potters, leading to their deaths, his framing of Sirius Black, resulting in 12 years of wrongful imprisonment, the murders of 12 innocent muggles, his service to Lord Voldemort, and his hand in the torment and capture of the Longbottoms. She paused, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Pettigrew's actions not only cost lives, but also altered the futures of many, including that of young Mr. Potter. It is the belief of this court that Pettigrew must be permanently removed from this world. Madame Bones lowered her wand, her expression cold but resolute. "We now call for a vote on his punishment." Sirius, still reeling from his own exoneration, had been silent up to this point. But when Madame Bones mentioned the vote, he instinctively raised both hands, forgetting for a moment that as a member of the House of Black his vote carried immense power. It was only after he raised his hands that the weight of the situation hit him. He realized that his vote, representing one of the oldest and most powerful wizarding families, held more sway than most others. The rest of the Wizengamot began to raise their hands as well, Most voted yes to the Dementor's kiss or the veil, understanding the need to eliminate the threat Pettigrew posed. A few, those uncomfortable with such finality, voted no, but they were vastly outnumbered. The official vote was cast and the verdict was clear. Peter Pettigrew would face the Dementor's kiss. As the vote settled, a figure from the far end of the courtroom rose. Augusta Longbottom, standing tall and dignified as ever in her stately robes adorned with the crest of the House of Longbottom, raised her hand to speak. Her voice was strong but lined with a deep, unshakable grief. I, Augusta Longbottom, Regent of the House of Longbottom, wish to raise a point before this sentence is carried out. The court fell silent once again as everyone turned their attention to her. It must be said that if Peter Pettigrew had not betrayed the Potters, the chain of events that followed would never have occurred. Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. My son, Frank, and his wife Alice would never have been tracked down by the other Death Eaters. They would never have been tortured into madness. They would have raised their son, Neville, as he deserved, and we may have seen an entirely different future for young Harry Potter. Her voice faltered for a moment, and she brought out a long bottom-crested handkerchief to discreetly wipe away the tears forming in her eyes, still maintaining her impeccable decorum. For this, I can never forgive him, and it is for this reason that I, too, vote for the Dementor's kiss. With that, she sat back down, the room now thick with emotion. The gravity of what Pettigrew's betrayal had cost became clear to everyone. Madam Bones nodded gravely. Let it be known that the vote has passed. Peter Pettigrew will face the Dementor's kiss. Moments later, a door opened at the far end of the courtroom, and the temperature dropped dramatically. The cold chill of the Dementor's presence swept through the hall, causing the hairs on the back of everyone's neck to rise. The creature, hooded and ominous, glided silently into the room, its very presence sucking the warmth and hope from the air. Pettigrew, now trembling violently, whimpered and tried to plead, but the veritaserum still in his system rendered him nearly mute. His eyes darted around the courtroom in terror, searching for any sign of mercy, but none was offered. The Dementor approached, its breath rattling, and leaned over Pettigrew. The courtroom watched in horrified silence as the Dementor lowered its hood, revealing the gaping, soul-sucking void beneath. Pettigrew's screams filled the room, but they were short-lived. The Dementor took his soul with a horrific rattling sound, and the rat who had betrayed so many was left as nothing more than an empty, soulless husk. The now vacant body slumped in its bindings. The Dementor, with its task complete, began to glide silently from the room, dragging the soulless body of Peter Pettigrew behind it, out of the courtroom and into the beyond. For the Wizengamot, it was simply through the door, out of sight forever. A cold, solemn silence hung over the court. It was done. As the Wizengamot prepared to disperse, Sirius stood silently, watching the Dementor leave. His heart was heavy with a mixture of relief and grief, for Pettigrew's betrayal, for the years lost in Azkaban, and for the people who could never be brought back. He turned toward Dumbledore, who offered a small, understanding nod. The war wasn't over, but a piece of it had come to an end. Unknown to Sirius at that moment, official documents were already being copied to Gringotts, reinstating all his titles, positions and wealth as the last of the House of Black. His name had been cleared, and his rightful place was now being restored. But for now he was simply a man grappling with freedom, and with a future he had never thought he would see. With that, Sirius Black has been wrongfully imprisoned, and Peter Pettigrew will be taken into custody for his crimes. This matter will be handled immediately by the Ministry. The Wizengamot murmured their agreement, many of them looking guilty for having believed the worst about Sirius for so long. Dumbledore turned to Sirius, his voice low but filled with warmth. "You are free, Sirius. You are finally free." Sirius's hands trembled as the auras unlocked his chains. For a moment he stood there, unsure, as though he couldn't quite believe it. Then slowly he looked up at Dumbledore, his face filled with an overwhelming mixture of relief, anger, and exhaustion. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, but all Sirius could hear was the sound of his freedom finally being returned to him.